that have been reported. And it strikes me that there would be a considerable difference in our working hypothesis, a considerable difference in the processing of those cases if there were a recorded reference. In your case, obviously, no one was standing there with video cameras that could have reported how you were treated. And I'm wondering if you think that that is having an impact on the processing of cases, and if so, to what degree and what way?
Certainly, yes. So we initially asked for body cameras in Denver in 2011. And now we're actually just working through finalizing what that policy is going to look like. So we have been able to successfully get body cameras in Denver Police Department. And as far as that means, I don't think it's deterring officers from engaging necessarily in violent behavior, as we've seen repeatedly time and time again. Officers have no problem killing people on camera. Sometimes coming from their own body camera. You know, some of the instances that have surfaced are recorded from the actual officer's personal body camera. However, it seems like a pivotal moment that people tend to point fingers at is Rodney King. How when that video surfaced to now, and I think that now, you know, and this is a newer technology. In the past several years, people have only just begun to have cameras at their disposal 24 hours a day. Majority of us have a camera on our cell phone. A lot of the time there are halo and street cameras that pick up activity, and actually some of the videos that we've seen in these other cases have come from street cameras in conjunction with body cameras. The idea is that there's more surveillance at any given moment surrounding us as people day to day than there was even 10 years ago. And I think with the amount of people, I mean, obviously given the past 20 years, the population has grown in the world, the global population has increased. So I don't know if necessarily they have prevented violence from happening or increased the amount of violence that has happened and is still happening, but I definitely think that it's made it, it's kind of brought a disenfranchised component of different communities closer together. And when I say that, I mean that it's building bridges, because this type of behavior and interaction between law enforcement, black, brown, and indigenous communities has been in our communities forever, ever since these communities were divided and populated. But now these violence are starting to come to the surface. They're starting to become a norm that is now being talked about. So that's what I think as far as the footage. And at the end of the day, would you rather not have that footage than have that footage when you're battling in a court of law? Because at the end of the day, the officer is stop one to the criminal justice system. And what you do during that stop is going to play a critical role in what happens moving forward. And if you have a video of what you're saying happened the way that you say it did, then of course we would want to use that in your favor. Yes, sir.
I'd like to hear you expand a little bit on the questions that you posed earlier. I guess you kind of asked if this was a consequence of the ism, the system, or a combination of both.
Yeah, so when I think system, structural racism is what I'm referencing in that particular line. And the best way to break that down is understanding the intersections, again, that play a role in fueling structural racism, from education to disenfranchisement of quality in higher ed, to the conditions of people's communities and day-to-day existence in conjunction with privilege and profiling, which in turn leads to disproportionate stops and contacts by law enforcement, and distorted ideologies of black and brown and indigenous communities when people may not have any other interaction with those communities than a television set. So I think that when we talk about ism or system, we have to understand that the system was built off of isms. So the system will never function if we don't dismantle these prejudices. So like, this is funny you say that, because I've had this conversation with someone just last night about how folks of color, they can't really be racist in the sense that there's no institution to back up those ideologies. There is prejudice circles that can be created and that can be isolation from small single family businesses and things like that, but as far as the structure and enterprise that this country has manufactured, it's impossible at this point to achieve that level of oppression through simple vocabulary unless it's flipped around. That would be it. Yes, sir.
It saddens me to hear about the depth of the depravity that operates in the Denver Police Department, but it doesn't surprise me. The Pueblo Police Department is precisely the same. It's a house of horrors, and there is a very strong connection between how little accountability there is for officers and the amount of sadism that they'll inflict on people, so long as they know that they can get away with murder. And so you end up in situations where communities are beset by a uniformed horde of people who are the worst criminals in that community, the cops. And it's because they're all a bunch of sadistic bastards, because there's no accountability for it. So have you explored at all ways to make cops more accountable? I've wondered about this myself. It's not a simple nut to crack.
So, one of the things that I've really begun to realize in organizing is there are pressure points that you have to learn to exercise that will have more of an impact than other avenues, right? Two things. In one of the cases where a young man was assaulted on video by one of the same officers as myself, and that was later another case in this long list of cases that Denver was responsible for. That man's father was a Pueblo sheriff, still is a Pueblo sheriff, and in conjunction with the idea of it, so to speak to your point again, so one of the officers in that case, one was a 15-year corporal veteran, Randy Murr, who was also involved in my case, and the other officer hadn't even been on the force for a year before he was caught up in this investigation of excessive force and conduct and all these other things that happened. And what's important to highlight in that case is the fact that, you know, there's only a couple of weeks that these officers are spending in the academy, and then the majority, the bulk of their training comes from their trainer officer. So if an officer, and mind you, the officer who was involved, his name is Devin Sparks, has no former law enforcement training, didn't work in correctional facilities, no former military experience. He was actually working go-karts at Boondocks before he was a police officer. But because of the dangerous environment that Randy Murr provided for this man, and maybe he was susceptible to these types of behaviors before, who knows. But one thing that we do know is in that first year of dangerous supervision provided by Randy Murr, this man is now being fired for an excessive force case that, you know, the rookie and the trainer officer are both caught up in. So, but and to the other component of that, so working with officers to highlight, you know, this idea that a couple bad apples is the issue. No, it's just that, you know, if you shoot someone and I see it and I turn away and I don't talk about it, that makes me an accessory to your murder. You know, so there seems to be an issue with the idea that this type of behavior perpetuates this type of behavior in conjunction with the impunity offered by district attorneys who never indict criminal charges in this kind of behavior anyway. So one thing we tried to do last summer was recall Denver's district attorney. It was the first time in Denver anybody had tried to do that. And what that looked like was trying to get roughly 54,000 signatures collected in 60 days to get that on the ballot to take Morrissey out of office. We actually were unsuccessful in hitting those numbers, but we got 20,000 signatures, and we've been focusing a lot of our attention on the district attorney race. We scheduled a term in November of 2016, and we have never had such a public election, a race for district attorney in Denver since then. And given the fact that it was an unprecedented effort towards recall, nobody had ever tried to remove a Denver DA from office before. So that was one of the things we tried to do, was focusing our attention on the DA at that particular moment, because the DA perpetuates this culture by giving them the green light every single time they decide to engage in it. But no, I think you're absolutely right. You have to form what one of my colleagues references as unconventional relationships with people in these positions to also get where you want. And the tactics that happen in the street, that can be from, I mean, don't get me wrong, we shut down southbound traffic on I-25 a week before the Super Bowl and did a banner drop. And it was this whole crazy thing, so we've done some radical action, but at the same time, we've also seen negotiated policy with people like Chief White, who's the chief of police, people like Earl Peterson, who's the ED at the executive, or at the Civil Service Commission, to get them to render components that would make this system less favorable to law enforcement and more favorable to this fallacy, this justice, right? That the justice that we know as justice, instead of just this facade that they're going to call justice, because there is no justice when people are being let off the hook for crimes that really spend the rest of our lives behind bars. Yes.
Are you a psychologist?
Uh,
Or what do you
I-
have your degree in?
So communication and actually I'm still in school. Communication is my major, and my minor is social justice with communication.
Well, I just think that it's amazing that you went, you just picked up with your life and after it all happened. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And I mean, honestly, just on that note, being in the position to talk about my experience in the beginning was very uncomfortable and something I didn't enjoy doing, but it's become also an outlet, right, for emotion, therapeutic mechanism that I've been able to use to digest this myself and have an understanding of what happened to me myself and what's happening to other people. And the power in personal narrative, how each and every one of us have our own incredible narrative that can bring change, substantive change. We just have to use our voice. But then being able to talk about this has been actually therapeutic for me. So we'll jump over to it.
I was just curious, you became very literate very quick, but when you decided to speak and become a voice, were you ready for possible repercussions, threats? Have you ever received them? Received any kind of harassment?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we have, and a lot of people I work with have. When this first happened to me, I went to 9 News, went in the station with the stitches in my face and pictures. And they didn't want to do a story on it. They said, come back when your criminal charges have been dismissed. It wasn't the idea that someone from the black community was, again, injured by law enforcement. It was that there's not going to be a story in you unless you beat these criminal charges. Otherwise, we really don't care. So, but until all of these things started happening and unfolding, there wasn't really an issue. But now afterwards, I mean, my partner's been followed home by police. I've been followed